Yeah. Welcome to From the Dust Podcast. I'm your host, James Sines. You know how we do it. Well, we're going to get right into it. We're live. I'm going to introduce my friend, that he met, come a long way. She's here to back up the podcast and share her story. Jessica, what's up?
Hi, James. Thank you for having me on. It's nice that we have our background podcast together, so it's great that we can come together today.
Right. We'll get into that. What's how about what you do and what you're doing now, what you've done. So let's get into it. Tell us where you're from and about the beginning. Let's get into it.
All right. So, born and raised Visalia, California. Went to Washington Elementary School. So, shout out to my Patriots out there. Went to Diviz, and then graduated from Golden West High School. So, I'm a Blazer.
So I know your story a little bit of what you're comfortable with sharing. Let's tell the viewers and the listeners kind of the stuff, your background, what you've been through.
Oof. So, where do we start? Where should we start? Should we start in high school?
What are some of your well, I don't want to get all into all these trauma and like problems, but what are some of your memories?
Well, probably the most first traumatic experience I've seen was my brother when he was in an accident when I was 5, 6 years old, kindergarten. And he was riding a bicycle and the front of his bike, the wheel came off and he was going down a hill. So when they told my mom that he was he was in an accident, we showed up right when the paramedics showed up. And I wanted to make sure my brother was okay. And I ripped my mom's arms and they were holding me back. And I went to see my brother and I still remember what I saw and it wasn't pretty. All his teeth were out. He had to put his teeth back in. He was in a coma for 2 weeks. And I think that was the most traumatic experience of my entire life, seeing my brother bloody on the ground.
And what at a young age, what did that do for you? I know it's hard seeing your siblings. What was he older?
Yeah, my brother's 10 years older than me. So I was 6 and he was around 17.
Yeah, that's difficult. When you see like anybody older in your life and your family that's older than you, that's strong for you. What effect did it have on you?
I remember bits and parts. I remember sitting in my living room and they wouldn't let me go to the hospital to see him. And I remember just sitting in my couch, sitting like quietly and not moving because I didn't want to cause any problems, more problems for my family, right? So I was like, all right, if I can be the best little girl and not cause problems and not talk, then that's to be better for mom and dad. And my godmother would come over and take care of me. And I remember just feeling alone and scared because my brother wasn't home. And my brother and I, we were best friends when we were little. He taught me how to, love art. He's an artist. And he would sit me down next to him and we'd be drawing for hours and hours. And what happened because of that, I became, I had the worst nightmares ever. My mom said I would wake up in the middle of the night and open the front door and take off running in the neighborhood. And I thought I was going to die. Every time I go to sleep, I thought I was going to die. I remember counting backwards in my head and the voice telling me that if you don't count each number correctly, you're going to die. And I was like 6, 7 years old when I was dealing with that. And I didn't understand. So my mom and dad, they would have to lock me in my room at night because they were afraid that I was going to take off running and then a car would hit me or something. But, my mom and dad, that was in 1990. And people didn't see mental health as they did now. So unfortunately, I didn't get any counseling. I didn't receive any therapy, no medication. And it was just traumatic. I was still dealing with it. I had some flashbacks about this. I guess my brain didn't process it. I wasn't able to correctly process it. So I had some flashbacks about this back in 2017.
Now, we'll get into mental health. That's something I want to get into too. Not just from a man's perspective, but a woman's perspective. Being untreated, what does that do? Someone being untreated at such a young age?
I had a lot of trust issues. I was really close to my brother. I was just always afraid that something was going to happen to him again. And so he calls me his little big sister, even though I'm 10 years younger than him. he says that I took care of him more than anyone else could take care of him. So I took on that role as a mother, and he would laugh because he said that I would go to him and say, "Do you have money? You know, are you okay?" And so, yeah, I mean, I grew up quickly, and I didn't even know. I didn't know I grew up quickly. I couldn't sleep at night. I was an insomniac. I remember I'd show up late to school all the time. They never knew why. Why is Jessica always late? I could never get perfect attendance. Everybody would get perfect attendance, but I didn't because I was uh, I was at the doctor's a lot. I had a lot of other health issues that stemmed from that, and they can never understand that something traumatic like that can change the make of your body, the health of your body. So I had the worst immune system ever. I was always sick as a kid.
Now we know each of the church. Were you always in that life and or the church life always religious, spiritual, but in the church life, were you always in that life
Oh yeah, my mom had me on a Wednesday, and I was in church Sunday morning.
at a young age?
Yeah, my mom and dad, they taught First Holy Communion at St. Mary's Catholic Church. My brother was an altar boy. So
Now I grew up in ministry as yourself as a PK.
yeah,
You know, and a little bit different.
a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah,
All eyes are on you.
a lot. You know, it was a lot of pressure and a lot of you had to you had to you had to be good because your parents, you know. But
Yep.
that's a whole nother story for me, you know.
I know.
They say PKs are the worst, but you know I got some stories. Let's get into what were some of your most trying times growing up?
I would say going to high school, trying to fit in. Um, my parents, I mean, my mom, she raised me. She taught me about predators, and my mother was unfortunately, she was sexually abused when she was a kid. So she informed me and told me, "Hey, Mija, you know, if anything ever happens to you, please let me know, right?" But I was afraid to tell my mom if anything did happen to me. And I mean, they don't know this. I mean, it's kind of weird telling you and the whole world, right? But some stuff happened to me that really made me confused when it came to my safe places and people not respecting my body as a child. So when I started dating, I didn't understand boundaries. And unfortunately, even though I was raised in a religious background and went to church, we were at church at least 3 or 4 times a week, right? I didn't know how to say or think that I'm a child of God and I need to protect myself and treat myself as a child of God. And I let other people tell me how I should be treated. And I saw when I went to Golden West, my new friends, the way that they lived, what they talked about was nothing about God, nothing about the Bible, nothing about church. Actually, none of my friends that I hung out with in high school, in the beginning when I started going to Golden West, they had nothing to do with church. So I was led astray. And it was hard because I was this Catholic girl during the weekend. And then during the week, I was just complete whole other person. And I didn't even understand what I was doing to myself. I mean, I remember just thinking like, well, if this is how it's going to be, having to go out with guys and let them do things to me that a 14-year-old shouldn't ever be doing. I didn't understand that. I didn't know how to say no. So that was hard.
When did you realize that what's going on was just wrong and you stood up for yourself and you changed yourself obviously because obviously now you're from what you shared
yeah.
you're a strong person and I know you're big on that.
Mhm.
I won't say category but that realm of life you're big on it and
Mhm.
you're against it. What does that do for you now? What do you do?
Like being so close to God and all that?
Yes.
Well, when I was little, my mom and dad used to tell me, I used to tell them, Jesus is saying this and Jesus wants you to know this. And I would say things that Jesus was saying and Jesus says, thank you. And they would laugh about it, make jokes, right? But I knew Jesus was talking to me And I was a little kid, even throughout my brother's accident, I knew God was there, right? I was constantly praying as a child. I remember praying over people when I was little. So that has never, I mean, I can't know any different. I remember one time I used to think, man, I think about God way too much. I mean, when my friends told me one time, you talk about God a lot, and I don't know any other way. So when I strayed away from the Catholic Church, I stopped going. Nothing against Catholics, nothing against I mean, that's all on me. That is all my fault. I stopped going because of myself. Um, that was hard. My kid's father, he wasn't into church really. I mean, he would go as, okay, it's Lent, you got to go get the Lent, or if it's Christmas, okay. But to go and to have a relationship with the father, my husband didn't do that. So I strayed away for about 9 years. And by the time I went back, it was because I had Eli, my first son, to baptize him. And I wanted my son to have that connection with God. So I would take him to his catechism classes. And then I had Benjamin. So that turned that circle, like that took me from not being active to being active again. And then I got married in 2019, and I tried to do the whole family going to church thing, but it was not easy. My husband, he'd rather stay home to watch football. And I didn't want to, stop that from me going. And I would go by myself to church. And so I kept going. When in August, it's actually, I've been a year, or not a year, 3 years since 2020, my husband and I separated. And we had some issues. I mean, like any marriage, someone told me you didn't read the fine print, right? And unfortunately, I didn't have a support system. We didn't go to counseling. We didn't have a pastor to talk to. We didn't talk to the priest about this, because if I was the traditional Mexican woman where I stayed home, took care of the kids, had a clean house, home cooked meals. So if we had any problems, it was because of me. I wasn't doing something right. And, thankfully, before my husband, he was killed in a motorcycle accident in 2021. Before he passed away, a week before he passed, him and I talked, and he said, Jessica, it's slim pickings out there, because he was dating other girls. And he said, you know what? We should work this out. And I told him, I don't know if it's going to work, but let's see what happens. Right. And I was praying about that. I was praying and praying, because I started going to another church after we separated. My friends are Joshua and Yolanda. I knew Joshua since Divisadero. Him and I have been friends since 7th grade. And so when they found out what I was going through in my separation, they reached out, and they're pastors of Praise Center Church. And they said, just come to church, Jessica. And I told them no a couple times, but they were persistent. They asked me again. And I said, you know what? And they go, Joshua's going to do the, what's it called for the Christian church? It's not a sermon. Is it a sermon?
Sermon, yeah, the gospel preaching.
Gospel, okay. Preaching. He was using a preach that day. Right. So I went, and my kids and I, we sat in the back row, right? And I see everybody there, and they're raising their hands, and they're singing. And well, rewind it back to 2001, 2003. My boyfriend was Pentecostal when I went to high school. He was the one, I would say, him and his family, and I love his mom, his Patty Dillard. They saved me from continuing that route of not respecting myself. So I saw his family and how they dressed, how they acted. And his family is actually active here in Goshen at Mount Zion Pentecostal Church. So I went there, and I experienced that feeling of love and respect for your own self, and respect for the church, and feeling the Holy Spirit. And I liked it, right? But because I was so Catholic at the time, and my parents were Catholic, and they taught, and I couldn't leave the church. But I knew there was something in me that liked that feeling of praising God and singing. And, because if you're going to Catholic church, it's quiet.
Pretty strict, right?
Oh, yeah, it's strict. I mean, you sit up straight, you have to kneel, you have to do the whole thing. I mean, I love it, though. I love tradition. I love that kind of just, what do they call it when you go to a Catholic church? It's like rituals, right? I don't know why I'm a ritual kind of person. I like things. I don't like change.
Tradition. you from being a Catholic, converting to where you're now, the biggest difference, not only in your life, but in the way you live for the Lord. What's the big difference?
That my only audience is God. And before, my audience was not just God. I was a lector server for the Catholic Church. So I was the person that carried the Bible in behind the priest. And then I sat across from the priest. So I sat on the altar. And I was so close to God as a Catholic up at the altar, right? But I wasn't close to God as a relationship. And now I am not on the altar of Visalia First. I am in the audience and I love it. And I've never been closer to God.
Told you, Visalia First.
Yeah, you did?
Didn't I?
I mean, I think we should tell the audience though, like, because you and I was a guest on Mega Man podcast. You heard me.
Yeah, it's funny how things work. And I just found I didn't listen to that dude. I just found him because through my cousin, he was on my cousin's live. So I was like, all right, Mega Man. So I started following, and then I was like, your episode came out. And it's like, all right, there's another creative advice there. Okay, I'm not the only person. So it's I want to say funny about how things work in unison and how people come in your life for certain reasons,
Yeah.
And I've always told you were telling me what you were going through, what you've been through, and I was telling you, hey, Visalia First is a place to be.
Yeah.
And people see it like, well, in this area, people say, well, it's a big place. Yeah, it's a big place, But if you go and you center yourself with the right people and you send yourself in a group, it's not so big after all.
Because when was it? Okay, I want to figure this out. See here, was it 2021? Like in August, I think, when you and I started talking. I think it was around that time. I remember it was still warm. It was nice. It wasn't cold yet. So where did we meet at? We went to Strings. And it was still nice because I remember I was waiting outside and you were indoors. Remember, you were waiting for me, and I was like, "You're like, where are you?" I'm like, "I'm waiting outside." I'm like, and we missed each other, and I go in, you're right there.
Yeah, good time.
Yeah, so that was in 2021, but that's when I was going to. No, that was in 2021. Was it
22?
No, it was in 20. It was like earlier than that. Like in February, because
you were going
because I went to Visalia First in August of 2021. So it was before that. Because what year are we in? Wait.
No, we're 23, 22.
Oh my gosh, I'm really off here.
I think you've been there a year.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so 2022. So 2021. No. When was it?
22.
I feel like I'm here forever.
22.
But, okay, but the point I'm trying to figure is like, so back then, when you told me about Visalia First, the first thing I thought was, no way, I'm never going to go there, because it was big. And then you told me you did the photography for there, right? And like there was like video, and I was like, no way, I can't go to a church where like I can possibly be caught on camera. Just that was scary for me because I was so Catholic raised, and it's not like I was a hidden Christian, but I didn't want everyone to find out because I didn't want to get judged, right?
I think it's it's a big place. I thought so too, like, man, what am I gonna do here? Like, it's a big place. But I went, just like I had friends that went there. So I just took that step and went in.
When did you start going to Visalia?
Oh man, I've been there for a couple of years. 3 years, 3 years and a half, maybe been with them. Yeah, it's a blessing, right away got plugged in, doing what I do. And like I said, people meet for a reason, because I have opportunities in photography that I wouldn't have if I didn't meet you,
Yeah.
So it all comes full circle.
But you did. I mean, you were talking about Visalia First, and you told me, "Oh, I love it there, and this is what I do." And in my head, I was thinking, "No way! Like, I can't go there, because if you go to a Catholic church, there's no photographers going around taking pictures, right? And they do the live stream, but it's just like one shot, and it's like really kind of like grainy. And if you see it on Facebook Live, you're lucky, So to see." They call them like mega churches, right? I mean, they throw shade at that. You see that on Instagram. Oh, I don't go to church because they're too big. So I had that same thinking, and which was not right, because you can't judge a book by its cover. And that's what I was totally doing. So when I felt the drive, the Holy Spirit calling me to go to that church, I knew that was the Holy Spirit because there was no other reason. I didn't want to go to that church. I said it to you. Remember, I was like, "No, I'm not going to go. I'm cool." Like,
Yeah. I told you.
so remember when I saw you? It was you were like behind the sound booth. You're like, I think it was a Wednesday or thing, and you're coming around the corner, and then I saw you, and I'm like, oh, James, and you're like, Jessica, like, what did you think? Why is she here?
Just hey, let me check it out. I tell people, they tell me where I go, and just this is where I go. Why? Because it's home.
Or were you surprised because I told you no, I wasn't going to go there, and then there I am.
And long as people are coming across and serving God, no matter where it is, that's what matters.
Yeah. So I mean, I put it out there. I wasn't going to go to any other church. I never thought I'd become Christian. I was the kind of person who would see Catholics get baptized as Christians as adults and go, weren't you baptized already? You know, I was that person. So I take full responsibility of that. And I think that's part of my testimony because I don't know who's listening to this. And I don't know who is scared to take that step and who feels that pull. And people tell me, I talk to a lot of people at church. I talk to the first time guests when they go to Visalia First. You know how they put up a code 34444, right? Text this number. So I call those people that text that number. And I would say 50% of the people who go to Visalia First were Catholic, and they felt that calling, right, to go to Visalia First. And I have to explain to them that's called the Holy Spirit. And I didn't know that's what the Holy Spirit does. I didn't understand that sometimes what you do hear in your head, it is God talking to you.
Sometimes choose to ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we listen and we follow the word, that's when. Well, I believe it's when there's grace. There's times like I hear him, you know, but I'm stubborn. I'm a stubborn person. I'm real hard and stubborn, and I choose not to. And then I wonder why am I dealing with this? Why am I going through this? God, are you listening? Mm-hmm. No, James, are you listening? You know, because I'm not in that grace. But I've learned to listen, and I've learned to surround myself around the right people. So when I am doing wrong, or I'm silent and I'm not showing, if I'm at work and sometimes I'm just at work and I just can't make it. I'll get a text, Rory, what are you doing? Are you all right? So it's just, we have to learn to listen. Mm-hmm. We have to learn to listen. When we listen and we follow him and we obey him, we're all right.
Yeah.
Because we're just listening to him. So
yeah, I wasn't listening at all.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you were.
And I was in my own world, and I've had this air about me. I mean, the first time I went to Visalia First, I was pregnant with Eli in 2012, and they had
I remember you telling me.
And they had a group for women, right, and moms.
Well, you see, like maybe at the time you weren't open.
No, I wasn't. I was very close-minded, and that's why I want to make sure I put it out there that this had nothing to do with the church. It was all me.
Yourself, right?
Yes.
Like I said, we don't listen. We put ourselves in predicaments.
And I think I was scared because I did feel the Holy Spirit calling me. I didn't want to be obedient at the time. I mean, I was a promoter for like clubs and going out drinking and dancing and staying up all night and, you know, knowing where all the spots at for the, you know, Thirsty Thursdays and Taco Tuesday. That was me. So why would I want to give that up? You know, I was going to have my kid, go back out partying, you know, it's
because it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to live that life. That's why a lot of people live it, because they know when you, it's not so much going to church, but when you live a godly life, or you say you're Christian, people expect you to live a certain way, and you have to live a certain way. You have to get rid of other things. And a lot of people don't want to get rid of all that fun stuff. They don't want to get rid of the men. They want to get rid of the women. They don't want to get rid of the drugs or the alcohol. Mm-hmm. It's easier.
And the porn and
all that stuff.
Horror movies but
when
the
you
rap
live,
music.
Yeah, when you live a life of Christ, you have to live it according to the Bible. And like I said, it's not easy.
And no judgment against them. Seriously, like zero judgment. I mean, if someone's listening to this and go, oh, well, Jessica thinks she's better than us now because she doesn't, you know, do X, Y, and Z. No. I fail. I'm a sinner.
I fail every day.
Yeah. I mean, I look in the mirror sometimes and I say, you know what, Jessica, Your kids are looking at you and God's watching you. And they say at church, and Pastor John 2 weeks ago, he basically said that if you're being disobedient to God, you're not going to get favored. You're not going to have your prayers answered. And that's all on you. And you can't blame mom, dad, brother, sister. I can't blame my kids. I can't blame my fellowship. I can't blame fellow churchgoers. It's on me. And so, I mean, if you have a beer, if you have if drinking, if you smoke a joint, that's on you. That's your deal. Take care of yourself. But for me, myself, I'm changing. I'm different, and I know what my. I mean, what was it, last week? I told Christian, I go, for some reason, I don't know why I want a beer. It was weird. I don't drink beer, and I could feel this. I go, why? And I go to these classes on Mondays, right? First Step Recovery, and I go, why do I want a beer? I go, I don't want one. It was weird. And I started praying. I said, you know what, Lord, like something's going on. Like someone's messing with me.
That's who, or we also got to be careful what we hear and who we surround ourselves with.
Well, this is what I was watching. I got sick, right? And so I couldn't go anywhere. I got not a heat stroke, heat exhaustion. So I was in bed for like 2 days. So I started watching reality shows again on Peacock because it's an app on my iPad. And I started watching, and the girls in the show are drinking and drinking and drinking.
It's what you watch.
So then after, I started watching a couple episodes, and then this was like a Sunday. So then the next weekend, I started feeling like, well, maybe I should have a drink. And I'm like, I don't drink. I don't want to drink. But it was so true. What you watch and what they said too is like in the Bible, it says, if whatever you put, your eyes on and you're absorbing that into your body, this is our holy temple. So if we disrupt that temple, it's a lot easier for the devil to come in and to lead us astray. So that's why I'm saying I have zero judgment about anyone, because sometimes you don't know what's wrong. I didn't know what was being disobedient. I didn't know what secular music was. My pastor, Yolanda, she would tell me, Jessica, you should probably listen to that kind of music because have you heard the words? And I go, oh, I like the beat. It reminds me of when I was in high school, I love No Scrubs and, TLC and Beyonce. And she's like, check out the words. You should really listen to what you're absorbing. And I found out that Beyonce, she wrote a song and she talks about the Bible and how she uses the Bible to do things to herself that I don't want to say here. You can go research it yourself. And once I heard that, I go, oh my goodness, this is terrible. Why am I listening to this? Why am I giving my money to someone who is disgracing God? And I didn't realize that you can't be lukewarm when it comes to following Jesus. It's either you follow God and you're obeying or you're not. And that scared me because here I am growing up thinking that I'm following God when I truly wasn't. And that scared me because I don't want my kids to say, oh, you know what? Mom is Catholic or Christian and she's doing this, but oh, she also acts this way. She also listens to music that cusses and she also watches bad movies and she also, gossips, I want to be a good role model for them. So that's why I changed a lot was for my kids.
I kind of want to backtrack a little bit. Now, the loss of I don't want, it wasn't your ex, it was your husband.
No, my husband,
correct?
yes.
How'd you? It takes time to heal. Grief takes time, but how were you able to overcome that?
Well, I'm still.
I know it takes time.
God, like I told everybody, as soon as I found out he'd passed away, I saw my Bible right next to my bed, and I grabbed my Bible, and I held it all day. And they say that the Bible is your anchor, and it definitely is. And they also say it's a living word, right? And it definitely is. And I would sing Toby Mac, I Just Need You. And I talked about this in another podcast with Brick Baker's podcast. And I would listen to that song constantly over and over, repeat. I mean, I don't know if that was my ADHD, but I kept listening to that. And in the song, it says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. And I said that to myself, 6, 7 times a day, every day for about 2 months. So that's what got me through, is relying on God. And for some reason, after he passed, I started reading a lot of passages about widows and how widows are like basically his babies. We are his, not his favorites, but he wants to really take care of us and the children who are fatherless, because he's father to the fatherless. So when I surrendered and said, all right, God, you know what? You say here in the Bible that you take care of widows. Here I am. You take care of kids who are fatherless. Here are my kids. And he has been taking care of me every step of the way. And the more I tell people about how he takes care of me, the more he keeps blessing me.
That's why we're here to share. That's why you're here, to share your story, to share what you've been through. Because, like I said, we don't know. This podcast has had many different stories on, and you didn't live such a crazy life, but it still shows that no matter who we are, that we still go through something. Mm-hmm. We're still going to experience heartache, grief. We're still going to experience loss. I'm going through stuff right now. It's like my mind's going a million places,
Yeah.
But as long as I know I stay grounded, and I know as long as I'm doing things that are positive and that keep me, I don't even worry about surrounding. I know I'll be all right, and I'm not going to stray, because I have every excuse right now to stray that I want. I have every excuse to pick up a bottle.
Well, that's why you message you, check in on you.
I have every excuse to go seek females, do whatever I want just to fulfill that void. But I know if I go down that route, it's not a pretty route for James, because in the end, I'm only hurting myself.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be back in. It's going to be a miserable person.
Well, that's why you need your fellowships. And that's what I heard one time. They said, why they call it fellowships? Because when you go out to sea and you have 3 or 4 ships going out together, right? They're your fellow ships. So if one ship starts to go down, the other ship goes and saves it. So, I mean, that's why I've been making sure you're okay, because I see your posts on Facebook about your father. And I mean, I'm sorry to bring it up, but it's sad, because I'm close to my dad. And my kids lost their father, and I saw what happened to them.
It's rough, but I know what he's taught me. I'm not putting on a facade, but it's good. It's good to believe in God, believe in the faith, believe that the Lord can turn things around. And no matter the situation, no matter the outcome, I know in my heart that he's all right. I'll be all right. That he's taught me enough and he's done enough. Mm-hmm. So there's no doubt in my mind that I don't believe now. I don't believe now, maybe soon, but sometime in the future, yeah, God will take him home. But I believe he's done enough. So I have that seed, well, not just a seed, but I have the love of God, and I've learned enough. I've learned enough to teach enough.
Yeah.
And that's
your dad's a pastor.
Yeah, that's more, man. He's been pastoring ever since some of my first memories since I was a kid. Everything I can remember. I remember when we were moving to the city that he was a pastor to. That's how far back I have memories. It's a good thing. Now you wanted to touch on something.
My mental health.
And this is it's a. I mean, I can say I've talked to people, but to get a different person's perspective as a woman. What is? Tell me about it.
Well, I really want to talk because I'm on these groups on Facebook, a lot of mom groups, and I've been seeing a lot of posts from women wanting to leave their boyfriends because of abuse, right? And it's sad. It's really sad, because they're posting saying, that's it. I'm taking the kids. I'm just going to leave. I only got $20. And it's sad, really sad, because it's not just one post here, one post. You scroll down these groups and they're asking for food. They're asking for money. They're asking for shelter. My boyfriend just beat me up. What do I do? And it's really hard for these moms. And you know what? The cost of living's going up. Inflation is real. Food costs like crazy. I mean, my poor children, before we could go to Costco and get a whole cart of snacks and food, and they'd be happy with all their, snacks at home. And now it's just, we got to get the food, the essentials. And it's the literal Hunger Games here in Visalia. And
times are getting
no shade against anyone who's on EBT cards, who's getting cash aid. I mean, you do what you have to do to keep yourself happy and your kids fed. Because I have a lot of friends who turn to like OnlyFans to pay their bills. And what happened with that? A lot of my friends, they're depressed. One of my friends who does OnlyFans, she had the city called on her because she wasn't taking care of her lawn. She was so focused on her fans and making money that she forgot about taking care of herself and her own home. So if you are in need and if you're scared and your boyfriend isn't there for you, you have to take care of yourself. And the first thing you have to take care of is your mental health. And there's a Visalia Wellness Center here in Visalia. It's off Lovers Lane in Tulare. They have an intake program there. And the woman who is the lead there, she is from Visalia. She is a licensed psychologist, and she works with mental health patients. And so she knows everything from bipolar to schizophrenia to depression, anxiety. So I met her at Taste the Arts in downtown Visalia in 2022, October. And I loved it. I loved how those people were. They were so open and knowledgeable about mental health. And I talked to them and I said, I dealt with mental health issues because of the environment that I was in. And a lot of people don't realize that the environment that you are in, like you were saying, you're surrounding yourself by people who are keeping you on track. If you don't have that, then it's really easy to go off track and to turn to drugs and alcohol and a lot of other things that will make you feel like everything's all right. But it's a Band-Aid. And so fortunately, after I had Ada, she's my third baby. I had 3 kids, 2 years apart. So I had Eli in 2012, sorry. And then Benjamin, I got pregnant with Ben when Eli was 7 months old. So 2 kids under the age of 1. And then I had Ada. So then I had 3 kids under the age of 4. And I was breastfeeding her. I had C-sections and she ended up in the hospital. She got a virus and she was in the hospital. She almost died. It was the most traumatic experience, second most traumatic experience ever. Seeing my daughter, they put a catheter in her. She was screaming. We didn't know if she was going to make it. She was losing weight by the hour. So dealing with that, having 3 kids with special needs. I mean, my kids have a hearing loss. So I live at Valley Children's. I'm there probably like every 3 weeks, driving to Madera. So dealing with that, and then having a partner at the time who Emmanuel, I love Emmanuel. That was my husband. But he wasn't very compassionate towards my feelings, which is the complaint that many women have. And I don't know, you're a male. You hear with women, right? Like, I wish you're you understood more, right? You're more open with me. Talk to me more, right?
I've heard it.
So it's nothing. I'm not pointing fingers, right? It's something that happens.
It's true. Yeah, it happens. It's true.
Yeah. So I didn't understand him at the time. And I actually felt really, I feel really bad now because now I'm taking classes about boundaries and mental health and relationships because I don't want to continue that in the future. And I never considered his perspective. That now he has these 3 children, right? And his daughter almost died and his wife is sick. I was sick. I wasn't doing well. I ended up getting mono, an autoimmune disorder. 3rd time I had it. I got it in high school, college, and then I got it again after having Ada because my body was, the autoimmune works is that if you don't have a good immune system, it'll overtake. So I have to be careful with my white blood cells because they'll go up real quickly. Well, he didn't know that was going on with me. Well, I ended up having flashbacks to my brother, his accident, and some traumatic things that happened to me as a child, sexual abuse, and very vivid flashbacks. And I mean, I've never really talked about this, but I ended up in mental health hospital because they didn't know what to do with me. And I thank them for that. I thank them for that because Quia Delta or Quia Health now, they took real good care of me. And I remember when I first got there, I was scared. And a guy came up to me, one of the patients, and he goes, "Oh, welcome. This is heaven." And I looked at him and I go, "Heaven? This is not heaven. Do you see where we're at?" Like, this is the mental health hospital. Who calls this heaven? Well, I understood 2 weeks later why he called that, because I was able to sleep throughout the night, eat food 3 times a day. When I ended up in mental health hospital, my potassium levels were really low. I probably hadn't been fed for like a week. My husband was concerned about my weight because I just had a baby, and he didn't want me to gain too much weight. He was always concerned about my looks, right? And I mean, thankfully, someone was, because sometimes I think that would be a lot bigger if it wasn't for him. But he was really concerned with, well, you're overeating and you're eating too much. So I got anemic. Anemic. I became anorexic. And you can't be anorexic and breastfeeding. That doesn't work out. So put all that together with having mono. While being in the hospital, they treated me and they were saying, well, she has this problem. And they were trying to give me all these medications and it wasn't working out. Well, I was just sick with mono and needed to be treated, and I needed to rest and food. And so when I did leave, I remember they picked me up and I said, "Wow." I said, "You know what? It was really nice in there. I liked it." And they looked at me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you are crazy." I said, "No." I said, any mother who's out there listening to this, if you get 2 weeks to yourself without having kids always constantly touching you and grabbing at you, and you mean nothing against my children, that's what they're supposed to do. They're little, but it was just a lot for me because I didn't have the help at the time and I was sick. So I got a break and I learned about creating boundaries at the hospital. I learned about support systems. My favorite part was when we'd go to the gym and we play basketball and I was having fun. And it was crazy because the doctor talked to my husband. He said, "She needs routine. She needs to be creative. You need to let her have fun." And I wasn't having fun. I was just so focused on the house is clean, the kids are happy, and I'm being a good wife. And I wasn't being creative and I wasn't having fun, and my life didn't have consistency. And that led me to falling apart.
From then to now, what have you seen changed, and how much of a person are you now?
How much what?
From then to now, what's changed in your mindset, your lifestyle, just to who you are in general?
Well, I'm taking a class actually with Visalia First, which showed me what I did do, which I didn't know what I was doing back in 2017, 2018. I didn't know that according to this book, when you're starting to feel stressed and pulled in different places, and oh my gosh, I got to do this, I got to do that, and I got to make this person happy. It's not their fault. It's your fault. And it was my fault for not saying no. And it was my fault for not saying wait, or I don't feel good. Let's pause this for tomorrow. Or, you know what? I'm not going to make dinner tonight. I'm tired. Let's order takeout. I didn't have boundaries for myself. So that's what's changed a lot now is I tell people you need to create your fun. You have to think, what makes me happy? What makes me smile? And podcasting, yeah, being a podcaster. So my brother worked for the radio and he told me, "Mija," he goes, "come out to the radio station once a week. We'll give you an hour. You can go on air. You can talk about Visalia," because I used to work at the Visalia Times Delta and I was a food critic for the Choices magazine. And I created the first magazine for downtown Visalia's businesses. So that was my passion, Visalia. I mean, I was meeting with Bob Link, the mayor, when I was 16 years old, hanging out with the city council members, campaigning. So dignitaries and city councilmen, that was just something normal to me. Visalia Police Department, talking to the police, that was just normal to me. So I said, you know what? That was fun when I used to do it. Let's do that again. So I told my brother, you know what? I can't commit to driving somewhere and being there once a week because I got 3 kids. But what can I do? I can get my phone and I can download this app and I can start recording.
Yeah, make content from right there from your phone. We just gotta do what makes us happy.
You do what you can.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, I didn't spend extra money on equipment, huh?
I mean, I might have been a little overboard, but this is who I am.
Yeah. No, but that's what
when,
I'm saying.
When I
for
do
me,
it, I gotta go big.
No, but that's good. Like that, I wish I could have done that. But at the time, you know, like I didn't have money for that, right?
You still made it happen.
And I still made it happen. Yeah. And I did the research and I found out that Apple actually has the best microphone on the market, right? So when I started recording, it was for fun. It was to help Visalia, but it was mostly because I knew that that was going to be something that I could wake up every day and look forward to. And so I started booking appointments for interviews. And it took off. I mean, I got to interview Dolores Huerta, right? Like, dude. And so still to this day, I'm on 2 nonprofits now. I'm on the board for the Hispanic Chamber Foundation. And what we do is we help the Tulare Kings Hispanic Chamber of Commerce with community events and outreach programs, and we help the youth. And I'm also on the board for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Service Center. So being able to create something, being creative, using my passions, which with the doctorate told me what I needed to do, helped me to realize that it's not bad as a mother to have fun and to smile and to say, you know what, Mom, can you take care of the kids for a little bit so I can go and run around Visalia and talk to some mayors and city council people and businesses, because that's what makes me happy. And before I didn't do that. I gave up my own identity. As soon as I met my kid's father, I did what he liked to do. I didn't talk about writing. I stopped reading, actually. And I remember one time I told him, I go, look, if you see me reading a book, please don't interrupt me. And he never respected that. And it was so frustrating. I was like, I love to read and write. Let me have some time to read and write. And I wasn't allowed. So once I started reading and writing and podcasting, he was not happy about it at all. But because of the hospital, I didn't care if he wasn't happy because I was happy. So that's the biggest difference now, is if someone's not happy with what I'm doing, well, if it's hurting someone, if it's going against God, okay, tell me. But if it's serving God and making me happy and my kids are benefiting from it, then let me continue. Support me. And that's a huge difference in me now, is I've never, ever was able to say this 10 years ago. Oh my goodness. You know, if you listen to my first podcast when I interviewed by Sun Gazette, this was in 2018, I was totally different then too.
Before we go, before my battery dies, I can't read. Any last words you want to say to any mothers that will be listening and watching?
That it's okay. You can reach out to me if you ever need help. Have someone safe to go to. Know that sometimes your friends are going to be your worst enemies. So be careful who you open up to. Go to Visalia First. Pastor Hope, Pastor Chad, Villanueva, Pastor Brandy have given me a lot of direction. And they told me that it's good that I reach out to them, right? So don't be afraid. Even if you're not Christian, you can reach out to pastors. You can reach out to therapists, Visalia Wellness Center. Seek a professional and don't be afraid what others think, because at the end of the day, you're going to be happy that you did speak up and say something.
Well, Jessica, I want to thank you for coming, spending your time, talking, sharing your story. If you have a story or testimony you want to share, go ahead and hit me from this podcast at outlook.com. That's from this podcast at outlook.com. Stories need to be told and voices need to be heard. Thank you. We'll be back with another episode soon from this podcast.